The Simpsons has a serious problem. The wrong people keep dying. Homer Simpson has caused nuclear meltdowns, poisoned the water, blown up half the town, and endangered his own family, yet somehow he keeps walking free. Meanwhile, sweet old ladies get flattened by cars, loving moms get blasted off bleachers by t-shirt cannons, hardworking employees get fried for pointing out a coworker's nap. The Simpsons universe has no sense of justice. Today, we're honoring the characters who deserved better. Let's start with someone you probably never noticed. Larry Dalrymple was a silent barfly at Maude's Tavern who appeared in the background since the very first season. He never said much, he never caused any trouble, he just sat on his stool, drank his beer, and existed as part of the furniture. For 30+ years, Larry just was. One of those background regulars the animators kept drawing in because he belonged there. Nobody knew his last name, nobody asked about his story. He was part of the wallpaper at Maude's, which is honestly one of the more depressing places to be a wallpaper. Then, in season 35's Cremains of the Day, Larry died at the bar in a few seconds with no build-up or big dying speech. He went the same way he lived, and the regulars only noticed a beat too late.
Guys, I think Larry's dead.
What surprised me is how seriously the show treated it. Moe and the gang actually sat with the loss. The producers even put out a public note acknowledging fans who were upset. For a guy who said maybe 10 words in 30 years, that's a hell of a send-off. He never hurt anyone, he never even raised his voice, he just kept the stool warm, and honestly, that's enough. At least Larry got a proper send-off. Alice Glick wasn't so lucky. Alice was the church organist. Tiny, elderly, surprisingly mouthy, and she'd been kicking around Springfield since the early seasons. She had that specific brand of old lady spunk where you knew she'd outlived 3 husbands, and one of them probably deserved it. For years, the show ran a reoccurring joke about almost killing her. She survived a robot pet attack, she survived stampedes, explosions, falls, pick any disaster. Alice walked away from it. I genuinely thought she was indestructible. I think the writers thought so too. Then, in a recent season 37 episode, she just died mid-sermon at church, where she'd been every Sunday for 40 years. And that's the part that hits me. There's something about the universe finally collecting on that joke that should have stayed a joke. She wasn't doing anything wrong, she was doing exactly what she always did.
The last pineapple, and plenty ripe, too.
But I'm not fruit, I'm a kid.
That's what the pumpkin said.
Alice is the kind of loss that reminds you nobody actually has plot armor forever, no matter how many running gags they survive. Not every death was due to luck running out. Some were handled with the respect they deserved. Clancy was Marge's dad, a former airline pilot who never kicked the smoking habit and wasn't the warm, talkative type. Praise from him was rare and usually had to be earned. He cared in his own way, but it came through high expectations instead of kind words, and he mostly kept his feelings to himself. But underneath all that gruffness, he genuinely cared. He worked hard, he kept the family afloat. He was the guy from a generation that didn't know how to say "I'm proud of you," so he said it with consistency instead. Showing up was his love language. Clancy died off screen from lung cancer. The show finally says it in Puffless after hinting at it for years. There's no funeral on screen, just Marge and the family coming to terms with what caused it. He was a flawed, devoted dad, and the show let him be that.
A real story, and it was something people were ashamed to say at the time, is that he died of lung cancer. Mom, how could you know that and still let us smoke?
I respect that the writers didn't try to make it funny. Some deaths don't need a joke attached. They're just simple like that. The Simpsons has been running long enough that these losses add up, and one of the earliest hits harder than anyone expected. Bea was an elderly resident of the Springfield retirement castle from the season 2 episode Old Money. She was kind, lonely, and she fell for Grandpa Simpson during his stay there. They had an actual romance. Tender, awkward, real. Bea was a second chance story. After years of being alone, she'd finally found someone. And then the show, which was still figuring out what kind of show it wanted to be in season 2, treated the relationship with way more sincerity than I would have predicted. Then, Abe missed her birthday party. He got pulled away by the Simpsons and never made it back. Shortly after, Bea died of a burst ventricle. Officially a medical thing, Emotionally, a broken heart. That one wrecks me a little. She finally got her happy chapter and the show gave her about 15 minutes with it.
She left everything to you.
Really?
There is one catch. You must spend one night in a haunted house. Just kidding. Just kidding.
She left her inheritance to Abe and it kicked off one of his more emotional storylines, which is sweet, but it doesn't undo the fact that the show handed this woman love and then took it back almost immediately. Bee's story was sad, but Maude Flanders changed the entire show. Maude was Ned's wife, deeply religious, mother of Rod and Todd, baker of cookies for every bake sale Springfield ever had. She was sweet in that uncomplicated way that made her the perfect companion to Ned's relentless cheer. She was, by every measurable standard, a good person. She'd been in the show for years as the stabilizing presence next door. While the Simpsons brought chaos, the Flanders family brought casseroles and prayer circles. Maude added real emotional weight to Ned's character.
Well, Maude, your dream has finally come true.
Then, in season 11's Alone Again Naturally, Maude got hit by a t-shirt cannon at a stock car race and fell off the bleachers to her death by the cheerleaders doing some promotional stunt. Homer had parked in the ambulance spot, which made everything worse, but at the end of the day, it was just a freak accident with no meaning attached to it. But surprisingly, the real reason Maude died was money. Voice actress Maggie Roswell had a salary dispute with Fox. Instead of paying her or recasting, the production just killed her character. So, a beloved, kind, completely innocent character got launched off a set of bleachers because of a contract negotiation. That's it. That's the reason. Alone Again Naturally is one of the most upsetting episodes in the show's history, and the cause of death is functionally accounting. Ned was never the same after. He went from cheerful neighbor to grieving widower wrestling with his faith. He eventually married Edna Krabappel, but you could feel the dent Maude left for years. The show learned how to do grief because of her. I just wish it didn't need to. If Maude's death shook the fan base, the next one left Homer himself completely shattered. Mona was Homer's mom, a free-spirited activist who faked her death in the 60s after a protest at Mr. Burns' germ warfare lab went wrong. Glenn Close voiced her, and she was everything Homer wished he had as a kid. Present, loving, interested in him. The catch was she chose her movement over staying. She left when Homer was small, spent decades on the run, let him think she was dead, and when she finally came back, every reunion was rushed, half-finished, cut short by something. They never got the long, cozy afternoon they both wanted. Then, in season 19's Mona Leaves, she died of natural causes off-screen while Homer was on his way to see her. He arrived too late. She was already gone. The episode's built around Homer's guilt. All the time they didn't get, all the conversations they never had, all the years he spent missing a person who was alive the whole time and just out of reach. It's one of the few episodes where Homer's pain is treated as completely real.
My mother's dead. I'm still with you, son. Oh, this just gets worse and worse.
Mona deserved a real reconciliation. They were finally getting somewhere, and the show, in its meanest mood, decided that this wasn't a story it wanted to tell. Some wounds don't close, and Homer's been carrying that one ever since. Sometimes the show kills a character for plot, sometimes real life forces their hand. Edna was Bart's 4th grade teacher and the most patient woman in animation history. That signature laugh, the cigarette breaks, the dating disasters, the bone-deep exhaustion of teaching the same kid the same lesson for 20 years, she made all of it feel lived in. She started as a one-note character and turned into one of the most fully realized adults on the show. She actually cared about her students under all that cynicism. Her romance with Ned Flanders was one of the show's better late-era storylines that gave both characters somewhere new to go. Marcia Wallace, who voiced her, passed away in 2013 from complications of pneumonia. The writers chose not to recast. Edna's death was first referenced in season 25, and after that, the show treated her as gone without ever showing it. The tribute was the chalkboard gag, "We'll miss you, Mrs. K." That was it. That was the goodbye.
Sure do miss that laugh.
I miss her too.
I think that was the right call. Recasting Edna would have felt wrong, and milking her death for a big tearjerker episode would have felt worse. Letting her just disappear with one chalkboard line as the eulogy was about as much grace as television usually allows itself. Bart's school is emptier without her in it, and so's the show. For all the unfair deaths in Springfield, this one stands above the rest as the show's most beautiful goodbye. Bleeding Gums was a jazz saxophonist, Lisa's mentor, her musical hero. He played on the bridge at night by himself, gave her advice she actually listened to, and treated an 8-year-old like a real fellow musician instead of a kid with a hobby. He was everything Lisa wanted to be, a real artist. He loved the work even though the work never loved him back in the form of fame or money. In a town full of self-absorbed adults, he was one of the few grown-ups who actually saw her. In Season 6's Around Springfield, he died peacefully in the hospital from an unspecified illness. Lisa visited him at the end. He gave her one last piece of wisdom, and she spent the rest of the episode trying to make sure his record got played on the radio so people would remember him. This is the one the show got perfect. There was no joke at the funeral, just grief, and the idea that art outlives the artist.
What happened to Mr. Murphy?
I'm sorry. He passed away.
He'd already had a hard life. The industry never gave him what he deserved, but he kept playing and he kept being kind. And when he died, Lisa lost something she'd never quite gotten back. I rewatch that episode every couple of years and it still works. Bleeding Gums is the proof the show can do tenderness when it wants to, which makes the next one even harder to forgive, because the show absolutely knew what it was doing. Frank was everything Homer wasn't. He worked his way through night school, he earned an engineering degree, he survived a childhood straight out of a Charles Dickens's novel, and dragged himself into the middle class with nothing but sheer stubbornness and competence. Frank Grimes was the American dream with a hard hat on, and then he got hired at the Springfield nuclear power plant. Frank watched in horror as Homer slept on the job, ate other people's lunches, and bumbled through responsibilities that could kill thousands of people. He saw a dangerous idiot being praised and promoted, while competent people struggled to get by. It drove him completely insane. Frank watched Homer sleep through shifts that could lead to a meltdown. He watched Homer get praised, promoted, befriended by the president, handed a key to the city. He watched a man-shaped hazard get treated like a folk hero while he, Frank, sat at his desk doing his actual job and being ignored. It broke him. In Homer's Enemy, Frank finally cracks. He decides to prove a point by doing Homer's job the way Homer does it: sloppy, unsafe, idiotic. He runs around the plant, grabbing things he shouldn't grab. He grabs a high-voltage cable like it's a rope, and he dies instantly. At his funeral, Homer falls asleep in the front row and mumbles about changing the channel. The mourners laugh, the coffin goes down. That ending makes me feel sick every time. Frank was the only sane person in the room, and the universe punished him for it. The show is openly saying that being right doesn't work, hard work doesn't matter, and the people who play by the rules get electrocuted while the Chaos Goblins get a beer and a nap. It's one of the most acclaimed episodes the show has ever made. It's also, I think, the cruelest. And that's the joke Springfield keeps telling. The wrong people keep dying, and the right ones keep getting away with it. If you want to see more of The Simpsons' most impactful moments, check out our video on the most painful deaths in the series. Some of these characters showed up in there too, but from a very different angle.